Joining me today is Kyle Lintner. He is the Principal and Managing Director at K-Ratio. Thanks for joining us today, Kyle.
Thank you for having me, Emily.
It's weird to be doing this virtually, but you're in Chicago, we're here in Chattanooga. And as I mentioned, you work for K-Ratio. Tell our audience what K-Ratio is.
Sure. We've become a lot more than we originally set out to be. I don't mind saying that. But for the legal purposes, we are a CFTC registered NFA member firm, CTA, IB, and swap firm. All of the acronyms and all of the jargon just mean that we are legally and licensed to provide advice and management with respect to futures trading or swap agreements. But beyond that, we've come to be known for more than just financial transactions. You guys know, November of last year, we won Best in Show for our freight intelligence platform. And on top of that, we've been developing dynamic pricing, and the latest iteration of what we have, our newest offering, is diesel hedging. And that's what brings us to today.
You come to Chattanooga fairly often, and we usually do these sitting down here in the office, but the coronavirus, which is headline news, is what's keeping us kind of in our separate places right now. But other things making headline news right now, you mentioned this, is crude oil. The price of oil is incredibly low, at an all-time low right now. What is going on with the crude market?
Right. Well, very, very simply, it's oversupplied. We have far too much production for the current levels of demand. We can look back to the Saudi Arabia-Russia price war that began this year. And then ultimately the nail in the coffin for the descent was coronavirus, because we took a lot of trucks, cars, and demand for goods off of the road. So what we're seeing is honestly over a 70% price drop from just January 1st and about a 50% price drop since March 1st, when coronavirus really took hold of everything. And that is somewhat of a silver lining with respect to the freight market, because obviously volumes are down and line haul rates are down. But kind of that one little glimmer of hope is the fact that carriers are paying less for the diesel than they were before.
So yeah, the price of diesel is incredibly low. I'm sure carriers like this price, but really big picture perspective, does a low price of diesel affect a carrier?
It does. So we're talking about the second largest line item expense after driver pay, and that's significant. So we're having a fire sale, basically, for lack of a better term, on what is the second biggest expense. And the ability to control that is what we're trying to achieve here, because the variability in driver pay or any of the other costs is not as extreme as it is as fuel. As anybody knows, and anybody who's seen the news lately, with the price of crude all over the place, you have this tremendous amount of volatility and variability on your second largest line item. And that's the kind of stuff that gives CFOs and CEOs nightmares at night.
I mean, obviously, like you said, this affects a carrier's bottom line. How do you extend the prices that we're seeing right now?
Right. So that's what we do when we talk about hedging. With the ability to lock in prices via futures hedges, you can take what the market is giving you today and assume coverage on that rate and protect it for however long you see into the future. This is something that carriers can do for 3 months, for 9 months, for up to 18 months and beyond. It's simply financially controlling the cost of that line item for however long they determine into the future. And that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to achieve, smoothing out that volatility and keeping these low prices that they're currently enjoying around for into the future.
There are other diesel hedging programs out there. How does the one K-Ratio have differ from others?
Right. We've got a few different ways. And the reason why we have these ways is because we listened to our current customers, and we wanted their feedback on what it is they liked about futures hedging and what they didn't like about futures hedging. And by far, the number one response was a sense of being cheated if prices continue to fall. So with traditional futures hedging, whatever price you enter into is the price that you're going to get in the real world. If the prices move higher, you're going to spend more, but that's offset by gains in your futures account, and vice versa. If the prices move lower, you're spending less, but your futures account lost in money. So even though the two mutually offset, there was a sense that they lost out on cheaper prices. So we built our program in the manner that they benefit if prices move higher, and we remit payment back to them for the difference. But if prices move lower, we don't anchor them or obligate them to us to pay for the difference. They're free to continue to benefit from those lower prices at the pump because of our one-dimensional approach. And outside of that, the way that futures work is there's a standardization of product, and that's necessary, that's needed so that we all know what we're trading. And anybody that's filed freight futures knows that we trade in 1,000-mile increments. Well, now if we look at diesel hedging, we're going to trade in 42,000 gallon increments, but that doesn't fit for everybody. So with our program, it's fully customizable by the amount you want, any multiple. It doesn't have to be in 42,000 gallon increments, and across any time manner you want. We've basically tried to make this as easy and as friendly as possible. So the cost is declared up front. That's the total amount of money you'll spend. It's customizable by time and then size as far as gallons they want to cover.
So you mentioned the cost being locked in. It never changes, even if the price of diesel does go up. Who absorbs that cost? Is it K-Ratio then?
So it's absorbed by the market. K-Ratio will work as a conduit between the risk a carrier has on his fuel expense and the market price. And we simply take their risk and move it into the marketplace, and that's what allows us to return gains back to them. We're not assessing a risk score and just taking a gamble or a bet on any of this. We're taking their program fee and moving those funds into the marketplace to align themselves in the manner that they need to benefit from both an increase or a decrease in price.
So kind of walk our viewers through this. How exactly does this work from start to finish? Because some people are probably listening saying, this sounds too good to be true. Walk everyone through the process.
Sure. That does come up a lot. Everybody says, well, what's the catch? What am I missing here? And truthfully, you're not. So the way it works is very simple. We ask a customer, how many gallons would you like to protect? And they come up with a number. We say, how long would you like to protect it for? And then it's as simple as making a payment for the premium and executing a contract, and you're done. So a typical scenario, let's just say you're using 200,000 gallons a month, and you say to us, we want it for 6 months. We give you the cost associated with 200,000 gallons for 6 months. You're given a price, and that's it. Payment, signature on the document, and you're done.
So it seems incredibly easy. How do customers actually get the fuel?
It's a good question. Very similar to freight futures in the sense that no truck will ever show up. With this product, no fuel is ever going to show up. So we're not going to come to your yard and deliver fuel into your tanks. We're also not going to tell you where to go to fill up your trucks. You're not restricted in any way. We don't need receipts. We don't need invoices. You're free to fuel up wherever you want. This doesn't replace any other programs that you might be in as far as an EFS or a cost plus model with any other companies. What we're trying to do is allow you to use those back-end cost savings that you're already getting from other companies, but we want to protect you on the front end of it. So our ability to protect from any sort of a price increase is what allows you to still keep the benefits from the other programs at the pump. Let's just say that rates move up by 30 cents or so. Even in a cost plus model, you're going to get that benefit from the other company based off that now 30-cent higher price. Our goal is to protect you on that first 30-cent movement, and that's what we're doing.
Obviously, it's all about protecting yourself, protecting your company, and so it's like insurance. And insurance, if anything from auto insurance to home insurance, any kind of insurance, sometimes it's extremely difficult to get. There's a lot of red tape. You got to go through a lot of steps. What is this like?
Right. So it is not insurance. And sometimes the words that get used, the vernacular is very similar, and that's where it gets confusing. But the premium or the payment that you make to us is what allows us to lock in that rate. This is not an insurance product. We are not using actuarial tables to assess a risk score and then paying out based off probability. We are charging you your full amount so that you can say, this is what I'm going to spend to protect my cost, and you don't have to worry about how those positions unwind. We just take that payment and we're placing it into the market on your behalf. And then we, K-Ratio, are obligated to you to make payment on it. And the simplicity of it, of simply identifying how much you want to cover for however long, and making the payment and signing the contract is it. There are no steps required like in insurance. We're not going to come in and make sure you're using the fuel. It isn't like a futures account where you're going to have to go in and open up paperwork that takes anywhere between 6 to 8 weeks to fill out. We just have a 1, 2, 3. How much do you want for how long? And now go.
So say I want to get locked into the diesel price today and I sign up with K-Ratio. What does that transaction process look like? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a day?
We can get it done in less than an hour. Honestly, it's telling us how many gallons you want covered and for how long. It's a contract and it's an ACH or a wire payment, and you are then locked in for however long. If you say, I want this price at diesel, which is obviously extremely cheap considering where we have been, and you want this for 12 months, and I need it for X amount of gallons, signed, sealed, delivered, and then you're done.
Is there a certain size carrier? Are we talking small carriers, mid-sized carriers, or are we talking asset-based carriers that should really do this? Or does it go across the board and it works for everyone?
It does go across the board, and it does work for everyone because every single carrier is going to use diesel no matter what. And it obviously means more in dollar figures for a larger carrier, but that's to scale with however many assets they have. And if we think about this in another way or in another light, it's the thought that this is something that potentially becomes a differentiator or a way to grow your market share, because when the price of diesel moves back higher, which we know it all will inevitably do, if you're able to run your trucks at a lower cost from a diesel point perspective, maybe now you can have that discussion about lowering your line haul rates. Maybe you can become more competitive to your customers because you know that's subsidized by the gains inside of your diesel hedges. So now you can run your trucks cheaper and run more of them more often with more customers. This goes beyond just trying to keep the expenses down, and it almost becomes a revenue producing metric.
It's all about the bottom line. Would you say now is the best time out of any to get involved with K-Ratio?
I would, and that is an unbiased opinion and approach. I only say that because of where we are with respect to price. We are at 20-year lows in diesel, and it is because of the unfortunate times that we're all dealing with right now, but it's somewhat of the silver lining in that cloud. This is something that is beneficial for a lot of carriers. This is something that's allowing them to keep the doors open. So why not prolong this? Why not keep it out into the future so that when times get better for freight, when the volumes return and the line haul rates go back higher, let's keep the fuel costs lower. So now you can have increased margins on potentially more volumes. And the two of those together, that's a no-brainer for growing your business.
I guess I'm curious to know, how has business been with this for K-Ratio? Have a lot of carriers been inquiring about doing this, or do you still feel like more people need to be educated on the subject?
Both, and not to give you a vague answer, but this product is fairly new. I think it's less than 6 weeks old, at least our version of it. We've had a tremendous amount of success with it, a lot of requests, a lot of customers signing up. We're barely able to meet demand on that. But the education still needs to go out, and I think that's just because of the type of feedback that we received from the customers. Everybody has their opinion on what hedging looks like. And for those that feel like they were burned in the past, this product differs from that, and it's entirely different in how it's the approach is and how the benefits are. So it is educating everybody on how you can still participate with hedging and not feel like you're exposed to be burned on lower prices. So we're trying to continually educate people, but as far as those that have been educated and those that have joined, the overwhelming response has been positive, and people are asking, how long can I do this? Can I continue to do this beyond the year that I'm locked in for? And obviously the answer is yes. And that falls in line with everything that we're doing at K-Ratio. The idea is always removing the uncertainty with your business so that falls to the bottom line.
As you just mentioned, an extremely young program, still less than 2 months old, or only a few months old right now. Why should people choose to do business with K-Ratio versus more established programs out there?
Sure. I think that's a very good question. It's a valid point, but it's one that I think is easily countered with the sense that K-Ratio in itself may only be less than 2 years old, but in that short time, I don't mind saying it, I think we've become the unquestioned leaders in the freight future space, as well as the award-winning freight intelligence platform that we have debuted at FreightWaves Live in November. We've quickly become known within the industry as people who have actionable insights and ways to run your business to both grow revenues and limit expenses. So from a risk management perspective, this is a total no-brainer. And if you look at the pros and cons of our program outlaid against what else is in there in the marketplace, we have very significant differentiators that makes this customizable, easy to use, and almost a set it and forget it type approach. And also, it's not limiting you to a one-sided deal on this. You're still benefiting in our program if prices go lower. It sounds really weird to say, and I often remind our customers, but the best case scenario in all of this is that prices move lower, because you're not obligated to me for any money if price goes lower. And 100% of your trucks will operate on cheaper diesel costs. Unless we hit the nail on the head with your coverage at 100% and price increases, we're only going to protect a portion of your fleet. So really the way for our program to allow you to benefit from both directions and price movement, I know is unique within the industry. And I don't mind saying, I think that's what sets us apart.
I like it. Well, I keep saying carriers, how they could use this product. Could shippers or brokers also use this product?
Absolutely. So for carriers, yes, this is your second largest line item expense. We know that. Some carriers will tell you it doesn't so much matter for me. I have a fuel surcharge, and we get that. And that's a different kind of conversation, and that has its own benefits as well. But if we think about the shipper, you're going to move your goods out the door no matter what. And part of that cost to do it is going to be the fuel cost. Obviously, there's line haul, but now you have fuel. So if you're the shipper, and these are the same kind of messages that we give to our shipper customers and everything else we do, take ownership of your loads, take ownership of your business, and exercise that control on it. Now, that can range from lowering the cost to your carriers and what you're accepting from your line hauls, making yourselves better with detention times and whatnot. But this one is purely financial. Now this becomes, hey, I know I have X amount of loads going out the door. Here's an opportunity for me to lock in this low cost of diesel right now into the future. Why wouldn't I do that? Now I'm reducing my exposure and my expenses on business I know I have to do. Now, I've made the metaphor before, and I'll bring it up again here. If I told you that you could go to the grocery store and buy 12 months worth of groceries for 70% less than it was a month ago, would you do it? And the answer is always yes, of course I would. Well, you have the exact same opportunity laid out to you here right now. Diesel costs are down 70%, and you can lock that in for a year plus. Why wouldn't you?
And that is a great way to explain it. Yeah, incredibly good way to explain it right there. I guess people, especially after that analogy right there, why would you not want to save 70% on groceries? What is the cost? I'm sure a lot of people sitting at home want to know about the cost.
Right. And once we move past this sounds too good to be true, what am I getting into kind of routine, then it's always, well, fine, how much does this cost? And they're expecting a massive sticker price on this. And it isn't. It's as cheap as 7 cents per gallon. So for 7 cents per gallon, you can control the cost of your diesel, but not be obligated to the price moving lower on you. Really, and this is when we get back into that whole concept of it almost being like insurance. You're just going to pay 7 cents per gallon to make sure you're not going to spend any more than you currently are on diesel, but still benefit if price moves lower.
So we're talking about this right now during a black swan event, during a global pandemic. Does a product like this only exist during these times, or is it always there?
No, really good question. The answer is it does always exist. It's just right now, because of the reasons we were just saying, if it's down 70%, now is legitimately the best time to do it. The opportunity always exists. There will always be a demand and a want for certainty and removal of volatility with your business's spend. But right now, and if I told you you could have that uncertainty removed and the volatility removed, and it's 70% off than it used to be, now it's a question of, what am I waiting for and what am I missing out on? Because the prices obviously can't stay down here.
Yeah, it sounds like something that's an incredible deal right now. Why, or what is the hesitation people would have for not doing it? Do people ever say, this is my reason or that's my reason? What do you hear most?
We hear two things. It's either a dislike for futures or hedging, I'll put it like that. And that has to do with what I mentioned earlier, the people feeling like they were burned or they weren't able to benefit if price moved lower. They didn't like being stuck at that higher cost. And that's where our program differs. Like I've said, that's how we structured it so that you can benefit from a price increase or even a price decrease. That's one of the reasons. I think the other reason that we often hear from people is they say, we just don't have the capital for this right now. We don't have the money to appropriate for this. And the response to that is similar to like I was saying with the groceries. You're going to spend this money no matter what. And if you're telling me that you can't afford to buy the gasoline right now, and we're not even talking about prepaying it, we're talking about controlling the cost of it. If you can't afford to control the cost of this right now, what are you going to do in 2 or 3 months when it's 40 cents higher? What are you going to do in 9 months when it's $1 higher? Well, now you're out hundreds, if not millions of dollars on this. If you can't afford to do this right now, I think you have bigger fish to fry. And for some people, that's obviously going to be the case. But for overwhelmingly the majority of the time, that's not. People just aren't thinking of this in the right way. And this is, again, a way to control that spend so it doesn't spiral out of control and benefit them later.
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer. Why did K-Ratio decide to get into the diesel futures market?
Good question. Why does anybody get into any market? And the answer, honestly, was this was something that was presented to us, a question posed by current customers, similar to everything that we've done. Like I said, we started as just a freight futures advisory, and our role was to get shippers, carriers, and 3PLs engaged and moving forward and trading inside of freight futures. It was during our time on the road and getting customers ready that they noticed some of the in-house software we had built out to do that. And that's how Freight Intelligence was born. It was, hey, what is that screen I just saw? We saw value in that and decided that there was a marketplace for that. Again, the next iteration, the next vertical that we had was our dynamic pricing, and same thing there. Customers would say, hey, I love everything that you're doing for us. Do you guys have anything that you give us help with respect to price? So always hearing customers ask for things, we understood that there was a demand for it, so we brought that out. And the same thing holds here with diesel. Current customers that we had in other products said, hey, I noticed that the price of diesel is really, really dropping. Can I hedge that too? And the answer, of course, is yes. So that's when we began to have those conversations about how do you want this to look? What is it you didn't like about the last time you tried futures hedging? And that's how we were able to develop our program, I think, from a low cost and a full benefit package, is because of that customer feedback. And I think that's something that we're always going to have at K-Ratio. You know, our ears are always open to whatever our customers or potential customers want. So we're always willing to adapt and change and present the solution to the problems inside of freight.
You've done an incredible job really laying this out and explaining it. Is there anything we didn't touch upon that you really think our viewers need to know?
Hurry up and buy? No.
Good advice.
Well, I only say that because of where we are with price, and I don't know how long this is going to last. And I said a few moments ago that this is something you can always do, and futures hedging is something that you can always do. But again, if the price is 70% off of what it was just a few months ago, and you know you're going to use this, why not do it, number one? And number two, you do have to hurry up, because to be blunt and to be honest, and I don't like to have these conversations, but the price is just unsustainable down here. We're going to see a lot of bankruptcies inside of the oil and gas exploration space. We're going to see companies just give up or stop producing or furlough workers to the point where we have forced production cuts. Now, other nations have nationalized their crude oil exploration, and that's why they can come together and decide on price cuts or production cuts. But in America, we don't have those measures. Businesses are free to do what they want. It's up to the market to dictate what they do. And right now, the market is forcing out the weak hands. So it sounds terrible to say, but we're going to have less businesses producing crude oil, which is going to result in a production cut nonetheless. And then that is going to get down to the demand level we're currently at. Once those two meet up where they should, higher price is a absolute certainty. It isn't a question. It will happen.
Good insight there for us, Kyle. Where do people learn more? How do they get in touch with K-Ratio?
Sure. Easy way to do it is to go to our website. That's k-ratio.com. If you're old school like me, you can pick up the phone and dial 312-736-2600.
Kyle, as always, fabulous speaking with you. Thanks for joining us virtually today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Emily. Always a pleasure.
No problem.